Out of ideas. Let me see if I can get a backing track here. What's happening when you're running out of ideas, to be honest, is mostly about the rhythms that you're playing and not so much about the notes that you're playing. And this is where also it gets confusing because you think you need to learn more scales, you need to add more notes, you need to learn all the positions of the pentatonic, kind of like what we were talking about before. But if I just have this, think of it, you have to think of it like a full story, conversation, right? So if you listen to that, that whole thing now, once I kind of upload that, right? If you listen to that, each one of those phrases was different, but had something to do with the last phrase, okay? So when you're talking about running out of ideas, most of it is rhythmic. But the other thing too is make sure you're not just rambling on and on and on with a solo, and it starts developing like a story, right? If you are with a friend, you sit down and you start to tell a story, you don't know everything that you are about to say, and the story could run on, especially if you guys are just chatting. This is the same thing that we're running into is if I would develop, even when I went up to that 5 chord, or kind of making that 5 chord lick and then a little similar. And then just at the tail end of that, I did, which was the ending of the first lick that I had played. First or second lick, something back there in the beginning. So you're kind of like pulling all of those ideas and you're stringing them together. Where that won't happen is when you play one phrase and then it's almost like it's forgotten, and then you play your next phrase and then that is almost forgotten. But and what gets boring? This is boring, but if I'm going to bring this back, but this is the exercise for it. Is do you have the ability to say the same thing over and over, right? If I just did this. You would be surprised, right? It sounds very boring, right? But if you can make up, and then you switch to another lick, do that 4 times, switch to another one, and do that 4 times. And what happens is you start developing your ability to play the same thing. When you can drill in playing the same thing, then you can make your subtle changes to the same thing. So if I take that same lick now, right, and I'm going to play just the same thing, but I'm going to make little changes. So if I do, even that last one, I'm kind of making the phrase last longer, or ending the phrase on the first beat of the next round. Right? Just within those, you can make so much impact. Now it starts to sound a little bit more lyrical, right? It sounds like something someone could sing. These are the ideas that all get strung together that do not end up sounding repetitive and boring. It's interesting that I went right for that word, because the repetition is what we're looking for. It won't sound like a bunch of rambling. Rambling is definitely where a guitar solo gets boring really quickly, right? If I just throw this on. nothing happening. Right? Way more interesting just to play 2 notes. Now we're on to something. Even if I just played 1 note. Just the placement of where I'm playing that 1 note is going to have impact rather than and when I have somebody coming in and that's where they're starting their solo with that rambling, it is funny that, you know, or I was in G. It is funny that their idea is, oh, I need more notes. What's another scale that I can do? Teach me more scales, you know. And it just becomes, you're just diluting it even further rather than just taking what you have and making the most impact with that. You know, are you using loud to soft dynamics? You know, are you always playing on the 1 beat? You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Right? Even that, you can vary that up a little bit. 1, 2, 4, 1. You know, playing a little bit behind the beat, playing a little bit ahead of the beat. These are all great ideas that you will not use if you're thinking about like, all right, man, like all right, cool. Let me get up to this next scale. Okay, cool. All right, I'm kind of getting bored. Let's go up here now. You know, that just becomes purposeless, really. So think about it like a story. You have your first few lines. Right, your next few lines should attach onto those. You know, it should make sense all together, and even in making sense, a completely wild change could happen. Right, if I have something like this, let me put this back on. Right, if I do, the first part of my 12 bar is this. Listen to that volume dynamic. Almost the same thing. Playing around with volume and note length, right? Sometimes the notes drift right into each other, sometimes I cut them off. Now if I do this, that's a dynamic within itself to then right, playing fast and then not playing fast. Right? So if you're doing too much of this, like, it's going to start getting real boring, especially if you're not letting it breathe. Now that repetitive note section of like a very tense building note is going to stick out even more because I let it drift off into kind of, you know, a drifting thing. Now even in that example, I wanted to drift a little bit more, but if I were to just come in with like that is at least 6 to 8 small phrases strung together. So with that exercise of playing and letting it sit and playing and letting it sit, now I'm just stringing it together quickly, but not letting it breathe at all. So it's still that last example wasn't a rambling of notes. That did have a story within it and a cohesiveness within it. But then again, if I were to let that continue, it would start getting repetitive, just as kind of like this machine gun of notes, rather than pulling back and letting it play slow. And there is, there is that thing where like a lot of people say that playing slowly is more difficult. I don't necessarily believe that either one is more difficult, but when you're playing slowly, right, you can't cover those notes up. You know what I mean? And you have to dress them up nice, Do you want something as easy as what notes you're going to cut off and leave just a tiny bit of space before the next note, or what notes you're going to drift right into the next one, is much different than, just those little cutoffs, and then playing around with the volume, what notes you want to spotlight, what notes you don't. These are all concepts that when you get it, you'll never run out of ideas, right? But it all starts with just can you sing the rhythm when I'm jumping into something like this, right? I'll just kind of hit play wherever it is. When I'm playing that, I'm a little bit more focused on the rhythm. Just before I start playing, I almost know the rhythm of what I'm going to play. Then I attach the notes to it. And then I think of the changes, because I was playing pretty drastically over those changes, doing the flat 6 on the minor 4 chord, and kind of leading tones and stuff like that. But the rhythm was first, right? So it's almost like, think about like if you're learning a new language and there's something you want to say, you go through like a process sort of being able to say it. And playing guitar can be kind of the same idea, where I'm starting, my first step is rhythm. My second step is now attaching pitch to the rhythm. Do I want that rhythm to go up? Do I want it to go down? Right? And then attaching note choice, or playing over the chord changes, or tension building and release. Do I want this rhythm that I'm attaching this idea of the pitch going up and down? Do I want it to build tension? Do I want it to release? Or am I playing nicely over the chords? That's kind of like the last thing. And people, we all do, tend to skip the first few steps. And without those, it will just be rambling pretty much no matter what. So I hope that helps. That kind of gets you started with, just like, do you know the rhythm? To be honest, it's a great songwriting technique. There's a lot of, I was watching a seminar where they just had started, and they were like, the teacher was there. It's probably like 12 to 15 people. They're just like, all right, guys, this is our rhythm. All right, somebody just jump in. This is our tempo. Somebody jump in and give us a rhythm, right? But don't actually sing it, right? So you're not actually adding pitch to it. It's just like ba ba da ba 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 da ba ba ba. Then the whole class starts singing it monotone like that. No pitch to it. And then it's like, all right, cool. Where do you guys feel like it goes up? Where do you feel like it goes down? Ba ba da ba ba da ba. Whatever had they. Okay, cool. Now that we know which ones goes up and down, how far up, how far down, what scale is it now? Is it in minor? Is it in major? So those are kind of the things that you want to think about to build something that's effective. I hope that helped.